Before we begin, if you would like all the slides, all the notes from this training, then look at the description. There's a keyword with a link to my Instagram. DM me that keyword and I'll send you everything. Good news and bad news here to start us off. The good news is you're not lazy, because you wouldn't be here taking time for your own self-improvement if that was the case. But the bad news is you're being lied to. You see, 73% of men in America, 40 to 59, are overweight or obese, according to the CDC. And in Ireland, where I live, it's 66% of men. So if you feel that way, if you're in that state, which can be temporary, you're not alone. In fact, it's normal. You're in the majority. But most traditional diets don't fix this problem. And in fact, the food industry itself has built a fortune on keeping you this way, this repeated failure. They engineer food to get you addicted, and then they engineer drugs to get you off that food. And it's a vicious cycle. So the advice you've been given was never designed to work. Fat is not a calorie problem. Gary Taubes, who wrote Why We Get Fat, says that obesity is a hormonal disorder, not a caloric one. The question is not how much you eat, it's what those calories do once they're inside you. Eating less and moving more addresses the wrong variable entirely. This is why you can be doing everything right and still gaining weight. One hormone controls body composition, and that hormone is insulin. When it's high, you can't burn fat, full stop. The primary driver of insulin is carbohydrates, not total calories, not dietary fat. Eat carbs, blood sugar spikes, insulin surges, fat burning shuts off, blood sugar crashes, hunger returns, and it's stronger than it was before. So this cycle repeats 3 to 5 times a day for most fellas. And that's every day, especially on the weekends, which we'll get into. So this is what your day looks like. Right now, wake up, refined carbohydrates for breakfast. Insulin spikes, blood sugar crashes by 10 a.m., and then hunger returns harder than before. Repeat this 3 to 5 times before you've even had dinner. So you're not overeating because you lack discipline. Again, you are here because you are a disciplined man. You are overeating because the cycle is physiologically designed to make you hungry again within 2 hours. Willpower has to win every single time. The cycle only has to win once. So this is not a fair fight, and it's never meant to be. The exit is not more discipline. That's not the solution. It is breaking the cycle. And that's the first step. Change what you eat for breakfast, and the rest of your day will change. Food is engineered against you. The Dr. David Kessler, who used to work for the FDA as a commissioner, he's a food scientist, and he wrote about the addictive nature of modern food. When you combine salt, sugar, and fat, it hijacks our brain's reward circuitry. These combinations hit multiple dopamine pathways simultaneously and then override the satiety signals. In other words, when we feel full up and satisfied. We just can't stop. You know, they say once you pop, you can't stop. Salt, fat, and sugar. This is what's called conditioned hypereating, and it's neurological, it's not moral. So you're not weak. You're up against $1 billion food engineering operation. Life after 40 also works against you. It can feel like an uphill battle. Testosterone drops 1% each year after 30, and low T means more fat storage, less muscle, and less drive to exercise. Cortisol is chronically elevated from work stress, poor sleep with kids, and financial pressure with kids. And this drives visceral fat around the abdominals upwards, i.e. the belly, or the middle-aged spread. Sleep loss disrupts leptin and ghrelin, 2 hormones, And these hormones control hunger and fullness. You wake up hungry and you never feel full. So the average dad of young kids has about 1.8 hours of free time per day, and the standard fitness advice completely ignores this. Your environment is set up to break you. The food you buy for your small kids, like nuggets, fish fingers, white pasta, is engineered, it's hyperpalatable carbohydrates. And you eat their leftovers. I do the same myself. You've had a hard day at work, your brain learns that certain foods deliver dopamine. And this gives you a relief. And Kessler calls this the stress reward loop. And it becomes automatic. Monday to Friday discipline is followed by the weekend takeaway that undoes the weekdays. And this is not weakness, this is schedule deprivation, followed by binge biology. The kitchen counter after bedtime, the snacks, no meal, no decision, just automatic eating with a low awareness. And like I said, I'm about to put the crappy food in the bin, the leftover nuggets, whatever, and I'm like, I don't want to waste it. There's kids starving in Africa, so I better eat it. No, but it's engineered against us, fellas. Everything you've tried was wrong. Now, this renegade white slide. Calorie counting doesn't address insulin. It creates restriction. It creates deprivation and then binge cycles. And this has a huge failure rate. Low-fat diets replace fat with sugar. You follow these official advice and it's gotten you fatter because of it. Running more increases your appetite in proportion to output. So you cannot outrun a high insulin diet. Willpower fails because conditioned hypereating is neurological. Relying on willpower to be engineered food is like trying to stay awake during anesthetic. You cannot. It's like counting calories is like being in a boat and there's a leak and water's flooding in. And as that water's flooding in, you grab a mop. Right, so you are addressing the issue, the problem which is a flooded floor, but addressing your hormones is plugging the hole. Insulin is the lever, so we need to pull it. So you need to reduce carbohydrates, right? Specifically bread, sugar, pasta, ultra-processed foods. And Taub says that you do not need to count calories. You need to change the hormonal environment. Protein and fat do not spike insulin. Eat them to satiety. Hunger regulates itself. Right. So in other words, when you eat when you eat protein and fat, it satisfies you. And even actually just eating protein itself has a thermogenic effect. In other words, you burn calories just eating and digesting protein. So then within 48 to 72 hours of reducing your carbs, you'll find your insulin will drop and the body begins accessing stored fat for fuel. Rewire your food environment. So we are a product of our environment and we need to set it up in a way that helps us, not hinders us. Kessler says that you cannot rely on in-moment willpower. You must restructure the environment before hunger arrives. Remove the trigger foods from the house, and this is going to require a decision that I don't allow this stuff into my house. For example, my wife would not want me to say this, but it's the truth. We get a lot of food for the kids, like when we go to birthday parties and stuff, people give us goodie bags and this type of thing. Actually, I'm not going to say this. You know where this is going, but technically I haven't said anything. Put it this way. We don't allow that type of stuff in our house in excess. But we also don't want to give our kids a food eating complex. So, for example, at a party the other week, last weekend, and we all had a little bit of cake because we don't want it to seem like, oh, you can't have this thing, and then they want it more, right? So Anyway, so pre-decide what you want to eat. Okay, and you don't need a meal plan. You need a short list of defaults that require zero thought. Make the bad choice hard and the good choice easy. Friction is the most powerful tool. So, for example, it's 9 p.m. You finally got the kids to sleep and you got that craving. You've been up since 4 a.m. maybe. But if that crappy food involves you putting your clothes on, getting in the car, driving to the nearest shop, and then getting the food, that's layers of friction that are going to stop you making that decision. Protein solves 3 problems at once. High protein intake suppresses appetite more effectively than any other macronutrient, i.e. carbs or fat. It preserves and builds muscle, which is critical for testosterone production, especially after 40. Protein has the highest thermo effect on our body. So your body burns around 30% of its calories just digesting it. Target around 1 gram per pound of body weight for your protein. And most men in a standard diet are hugely under-eating this. Because what's prescribed by the government, all governments, is enough to just not fall apart. But we want to be building muscle, especially as we age, and we require more protein. Sleep, oh sacred sleep, is a fat loss non-negotiable. 1 night of poor sleep increases ghrelin, that's the hunger hormone. Good way of thinking about it is like ghrelin sounds like gremlins. So imagine when you haven't slept, the gremlins are out and they need to be fed. And it reduces leptin, which is your fullness hormone. Sleep deprived fellas consume an average of 300 to 500 extra calories the following day without noticing when they're sleep deprived. Poor sleep elevates your cortisol, which is your chronic stress hormone, which drives fat storage and muscle breakdown simultaneously. So you cannot eat your way out of a sleep deficit. Fix sleep first, everything else will get easier. From personal experience, as a dad of 3 children under the age of 5, my day can start at 2 a.m., 3 a.m. Depends, someone's had a nightmare, someone's weed the bed, who knows. I find no matter what, if I incorporate exercise every day, doesn't have to be world records, but something that dramatically reduces my cravings because exercise gives you dopamine. Right? So you can't control your sleep all the time when you've got little kids, but you can control your exercise routine, which we'll get onto now. Strength training beats cardio. Cardio, by the way, is fantastic for heart health and will supplement and benefit your strength training because you've got a bigger engine in your heart, that is. But it's not the best tool for fat loss. And if we're honest, fellas say, I want to lose weight. You want to look good naked. You want to be able to go to a swimming pool on holiday with your family and not dread taking your shirt off. To lead the lights on with the missus sometimes. Well, hey. Muscle is metabolically active tissue. It's the tissue, it's the organ of youth. And more muscle means a higher resting metabolic rate, 24 hours a day. So imagine you've got 2 cars. You've got a little Mini or you've got an SUV, a Hummer. One of those burns more petrol just sitting at the traffic lights, and it's the bigger one. So the more muscle you got on you, the more you can eat. And that muscle just wants that energy from that food. So the great thing about strength training is you get to enjoy your grub more, without putting on fat. Resistance training improves your insulin sensitivity. Right? Every set makes your cells better at handling glucose. And all you need is 3 30-minute sessions per week. That's sufficient. You can do it at home. I have my own home gym. You set of dumbbells. You can get a weighted vest if you want. You can do it for very little. Gravity is free. And Taub says that exercise for health, not for fat loss, like we just mentioned, because exercise reduces the cue-triggered cravings by regulating your dopamine. like in my situation. We need to break the stress eating loop, which is particularly present on the weekends. So Kessler talked about the stress food reward loop being a conditioned behavior. It's not what a lot of people think of it to be a character flaw. And good thing about it being a loop is that it can be interrupted. So you need to identify your main eating triggers: stress, boredom, or just habit. They account for the majority of unconscious eating. And then replace that behavior, not just the food, but the behavior, with something else. So it might be a 5-10 minute walk after dinner in the evening times. Now, if you've got kids, this might be challenging because you've got to do your bedtimes. But can you and the missus, what I was chatting about some of that's on the weekend. Someone who's also got 2 young kids. They have a walking pad. So me and the missus, when we sit down at night time, we like to watch rubbish reality TV because our brains are just too exhausted from putting 3 kids to bed. And this lady does the same, but she's on a walking pad in the front room. Her and her husband take turns, instead of just sitting on the couch. So the goal is not to white knuckle resistance. It's to make it automatic so that it becomes effortless. How do we implement this? Right, this is what you do for the next 2 weeks. This is what you actually put into place. Week 1, remove the 3 biggest carbohydrate sources from your daily diet. So don't add anything, just remove. Right, then in the same week, add protein to your breakfast. Eggs, Greek yogurt, even a protein shake. This single change is going to reduce your daily caloric intake because you won't have that crash and those cravings. Then in week 2, add 3 resistance trainings to your schedule, 30 minutes each. Compound movements, deadlifts, presses, squats, lunges, pair of dumbbells is all you need. And also within the second week, set a hard sleep boundary. So you have an alarm to wake up in the morning, but do you have an alarm or notification to go to bed at night time? So get into bed. We try to get to bed at 9:30, before 10. Make that non-negotiable for 5 days. And notice what happens to your hunger. In other words, once the kids are in bed, do what you're going to do with the missus, whatever it may be, and then get yourself to bed. But it can't be a diet. It has to be a system. Because a diet, subconsciously, you tell yourself this is temporary. I'm punishing myself. Diets have a start and an end date. And that's why they fail. But a system runs indefinitely. And it has minimal conscious effort. The goal is to build defaults, not to try and build discipline. Discipline is going to deplete and discipline is going to fade. But defaults will persist. Kessler and Taubes agree on one thing: the environment must change before the behavior can. Willpower is the last resort, not the first. 4 things: lower insulin, raise your protein, protect your sleep, lift your weights. And that's the whole system. The second half of our life, we are in that now. If you're over 40, you're in the back 9. The dad who gets this right is not the leanest fella in the room. He's the most consistent. He has restructured his environment, so the right choice is the easy choice. He stopped blaming himself for a system that was designed to exploit him. And he's building a body his kids will remember. One that's active, involved, and proving that the second half of our life can be the best half. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Catch up with you next time.